Welcome to the Startup Lowdown, where we go beyond the surface to uncover the real stories behind building a successful business. I'm Kase Dean, here to bring you an honest look at the ups, downs, and unexpected turns that come with growing something from the ground up. In this podcast, we focus on the human side of business, the tough decisions, the resilience, and the values that drive purpose-driven leaders. Join us as we dive into the personal journeys of inspiring business owners who are committed to making a real impact. Let's get into today's conversation. Lowdown. My guest today is Michael, and I'm going to say the whole thing. Michael TaylorLyfe Taylor. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. We had a few technical problems getting into this, which happens, right? We kind
Yeah,
of are missing
definitely.
each other in the digital world, but we've made it happen. So let me explain to you who Michael is. And this is not actually going to explain who Michael is. I think from what I've received and what I've seen, this is like a small condensed version of what Michael is. Michael TaylorLyfe is a decorated army veteran turned entrepreneur and advocate. As CEO of TaylorLyfe Digital Marketing and Chaotic Chronicles, he champions gaming culture and creativity, founder of the Dungeon Scribe Society and co-host of the Side Quest podcast. Michael empowers communities through storytelling, innovation, and advocacy for neurodivergence, all while being a dedicated husband and father of four. How's that for an introduction of you? Is that
That's,
does that
I
work?
mean, hey, it sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie. You know, I've got in the last 2 years or so, my assistant is AI, and I throw stuff at it like, please help me condense this bio down into a 50-second intro. But afterwards, you need to be a knowledge expert of what you're pointing. So I'm really asking you, how well was that done?
No, I mean it definitely it's a great intro. You can't cram everything in. That 30 seconds or whatever. If you did, then you would definitely be talking a whole lot faster.
Indeed.
But yeah, but it definitely covers some of the major points for sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Michael, absolutely pleasure to have you here. I'm really happy to speak to you. It's a weird one because I'm a bit of a spiritual guy, so I don't know exactly the reason why, but I absolutely know that this is going to be a great one speaking to you. So this is going to be one of the first times in my life where I've used the word I'm going to use and felt a little bit weird about using it, especially because you were in the US Army for 21 years. So I did a little bit of recon on you. And what I found out is you've been in digital marketing, running your own business for 6 years. And I'm going to go backwards. No. Let me switch it, actually. So let me switch it. In the US Army for 21 years. And within that, you worked within the communications part of the army.
Mhm.
And as we're going through your army career, cigars comes into play. And then you went into being an army recruiter, then a fiction writer, then a tier one certified contractor, VIP escort, and personal security. And then afterwards comes the boring stuff of digital marketing, right? That's what I see as the
Pretty,
timeline.
yeah, pretty, pretty close. Yeah.
So, can you take me back to? I think I was most interested in what is the communications thing that you were doing in the army, because you did it for quite a while. And for
Uh,
me, I'm the kind of person who for my own life, had to get good at connecting the dots. Right? I'm
yeah.
48. Sometimes you're living your life and you're like, what the is going on? But there's a point get your life where it all seems to make sense. Now, if I was to just look at those little milestones in your timeline, it doesn't really make sense. But if for me personally, communications, storytelling, passing information, because we even do that through fiction, escort, protecting people, recruiter, which is also aligning people with their purpose, what they're going to be doing going forwards. and then obviously digital marketing. But I want to hear it from you. What was communications? Tell me about the cigar bit that goes in the middle, and then the army recruiter. What was going on there?
Okay. All right. Well, hope you got a couple minutes.
Yes, I do.
So by the time my entire career, I just hit right at like 22 years. Going in, from the army, and I retired 3 years ago. This December. Um, so I joined the army. I was going into, I was actually going to college. I was going to Texas Tech College. Had some minor scholarships with a few grants and whatnot, and I turned that down. I had a family that I had. I had a son when I was in high school. Um,
How old were you when your son was born?
I was 17, I believe.
Oh,
Uh,
okay, you trumped
yeah,
me. I was 19 when my first son was born.
yeah. No, I was still in high school, and I was, you know, the growing up was a little different than most, and a little harder, and it was a lot. There's a lot of stories, let's just say, and so I had a son, and I did have some good people around me, and kept morals, and I fell in and out of different crowds, but I kept a lot of morals, and there I had some people that were definitely keep my head somewhat straight. So at the time I was like, the college would have been awesome, that was a goal of mine in life, but at the same time I was like, well, I just I need to take care of my kid. So
At that point when you became a father and college was looking good, because for some people, college is, that whole education system is obligation. I've got three boys. I have to help them understand that, yeah, it's
yeah.
shit. You still got to go. But you sound like did you have an idea of what you wanted to do at college, or were you just going through it?
No, no. So by the time I was in that area where I was going to go to college, I was going to be an architect. So
Ah,
I was very good at back then. Now it's something else, but it was AutoCAD. It was when it was first coming out. I was really good at it, and I had already talked to a company in the area. It was more like it's kind of like a factory, and they were going to help pay as long as I came back and worked for them, which was fine for a kid because you're just like, well, I have no idea what I'm gonna do, but I know that if I do this, then I'm gonna get paid.
right.
Uh, so and I, I myself is, as I'm a pretty spiritual person. I grew up in the South, so Southern Baptist is a huge thing, and I was like, well, there's a reason, for these things, and my grandfather and my father were huge in religion as well, and so um, they talked to me, and I was very confused, I guess, and just happened to be in the library when an army recruiter was telling their spill. I wasn't even in it. I just sat in the back and kind of just listened as I was like looking for a book, and I finally just walked up to him at the end. I was like, "Hey, man, like this is my problem. This is what I have going on. These are my questions." And I just laid everything out, and he was like, "All right." He's like, "I think I have somebody for you." He took me to another recruiter, and the guy knew exactly he knew what to say, but at the same time, I had a very good experience with my recruiter. I didn't, he didn't lie. He didn't try to cheat me out of stuff. He was very honest. And to this day, as a recruiter, prior, to, myself, I can definitely say the dude definitely was very honest about everything.
Can I just
And
ask you? Can I just
yeah,
ask you because the word is common, recruiter, but there's something, and I think I'm going to tell you from outside, right? As a British person who's grown up, like I think a lot of the world watching American culture, I've always said that America through entertainment, films, it's like if you looked at America as a business, it's got the best marketing in the world, like
yeah,
like the best marketing in the freaking world. I remember when I first went to New York and I was in Times Square and I was like, oh shit, it's like exactly on the movies. There's smoke coming out the floor. Look, all the yellow cabs, all
yeah,
the lights. It's crazy. But I don't think it doesn't make sense to me to just leave it at where you've put it so far because some stuff is obvious to you, but it's amazing to me. So you spoke to an army recruiter, you became a recruiter yourself, and you've just talked to the fact that you were able, through your own experience, to know that the recruiter you had was a good recruiter. This is my feeling of recruitment of in the army, from what I know. A guy sitting behind a desk, literally people, I think you either go to the army or go to the church, right? At certain points of your life. Comes in, the child doesn't know what they're doing, or they're literally like, I can't go to another country, but this seems to be a great way for me to get away from my life. The recruiter just literally says, well, how old are you? He tells him how old he is, cool, sign here, through the door. And that's it. But in actual fact, what you've explained just now, you listen to someone speak and you're very intelligent at this age. You're in the library, you're looking for a specific book, something's picked up, and now you're listening to the guy talk, and you've gone up to him and said to him, this is my situation. So there's something that's being said by this recruiter that's beyond just trying to sign people up to be another number in the army. There's something happening here. Could you talk to that? Especially what you've said about how you're able to judge that person as a recruiter yourself. What is that recruitment about at its core? Beyond what I've seen as a cliche growing up.
Yeah. Well, at the time I was 17, so I was definitely kind of naive to the world, but I knew exactly what I needed to get done just by, watching, my father and my grandfather. I knew that you take care of your family. You gotta, get an education of some sort. You don't have to go to college, but you need to have some type of skill. Um, and then definitely just work. Like for me, being in the South, everybody, a man has to work, and that's his number one priority. After God, family, work, and those are the top three things. And so for me, I was in the library. I was a huge nerd. That was me. But I was even today I'm 6'4", 265 pounds, and most people look at me as I just walk around as like a gym rat, or I should just be breaking rocks or something. But I was actually in the library, probably looking up, trying to find a book, like I think Beowulf or something, like something nerdy, and I just happened to hear the guy, and he spoke on things that I needed. Money for education. There was an allowance to take care of your family. You get to travel a little bit, and you get a skill. You this and I also came from a military background as well, from a
Okay.
family aspect, and I'm fourth generation military, and my son was the fifth
Okay.
generation. So I know a little bit about the military. No, my grandfather retired from the Air Force, and my dad was only in like 4 or 5 years, and then got out. Um, and so I knew somewhat, a little bit about it just by them telling me, and then as I was getting older, a little bit more, so I got to understand. So I knew that if I did join, I was going to be able to have a steady paycheck. I was going to have health insurance. I was going to have a roof over my head. My family would have been taken care of. I I would have had a skill and money for education as well. I knew that I wouldn't be able to go to college that exact moment, like after I graduated, like a lot of friends did. But at the same time, I knew that sooner or later I would be able to get my education. Um, so that's where I kind of went with that, and I just told him, like, hey, I think I might have had I might have just had my son.
Right.
Um, or I knew that she was pregnant. It was one or the other, and so I took kind of I wouldn't say the higher road. It was more of the responsible road,
Right.
um, to do, and I just kind of just went there and talked to him, and that was it. And he kind of from there, that the other recruiter that he brought me to actually really took care of me, man. Like he would I lived out of town, so he would drive like 30 minutes, to take me from school to home, and he always met with my parents. He was always like calling and checking up on me. Like, he was very sincere about it. So I never asked him but I felt like he had this like something, something reminded him of himself in a way, like something, it may be my childhood or something, because he was really like adamant about some of the things, and he would even check up on me in school. So it was like it was a lot of he did a lot of stuff that a lot of normal recruiters wouldn't have done.
Mm.
So I owe a lot to him for just being there as a positive influence. Not just an army recruiter trying to make numbers and trying to
Right.
get people in, which I saw a lot, as a
Okay.
kid in there, and then later on, I learned a lot more. But at that moment, being 17, like that was a big thing. I really do, think that guy he was very sincere about it, and he didn't lie. He got me everything that I had wanted, or if I had a question, he would answer it, and then he would tell me flat out, be like, you can't do that, or you can't have that, or it's not going to happen. So it was a good thing. So I joined the army after high school,
How long did the
and
recruitment process take?
I think I was in for like 18 months. I think I joined when I was a junior in high school, um, or right at the end of my junior year, I think. Um, and then the whole senior year, I was in the process. It was called like the delayed entry program. That's what it was called. So you get like a military ID. It's a different looking one, but it shows that you're in the delayed entry program, and then you do these trainings with them once a month, and then you do some other stuff. Um, and you get to pick your job prior to that, so you're able to kind of um, know what you were going to do. And at that time, I really didn't know too much about myself, because you're a teenager. Like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you don't know crap about yourself, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in and I told him, I was like, hey, I don't want to, uh, I don't want to get my hands dirty, you know. Because the guy was just like, cause when the process, this is what the process was. The guy told me everything. And I was like, okay. Uh, he's like, come to my office. I was like, okay. So I went. I told my dad. My dad was in the military, and he was like, all right, let's go check it out. And then at first I was like, well, if they can do this, I want to be a Marine. Like I want to be a Marine. They had great commercials. Like
Yeah.
when I was a kid, like growing up to see the Marines, like they were fighting lava monsters and dragons and all this other crap. I was like, that's what I want to do. That's amazing. Uh, I went into the Marines, and the guy, I was just like, these people are crazy. Like I can't do this. And so I walked out, and the army guy was standing outside. He might have been smoking a cigarette. He might have been just sitting, outside. And he was like, you go in there? I was like, yeah. He's like, did you like what you heard? I was like, no. He's like, cool. He's like, how about you come in here and I'll show you. I was like, all right. Me and my dad were just, we walked in, and I told him exactly that. I was like, I don't want to get my hands dirty, man. Like, what you got for me? And my scores were really good. And so then that's when he laid out this list. It was like 20, 30 jobs, and I picked one. I was like, that sounds really cool. And the job I picked was in the communication field. I dealt with a lot of ComSec, top secret
What was it
material.
though? What was that? If 20 something jobs and you've got descriptions, what was it about that job that made you think that one?
It was because it dealt with like top secret material. I get a top secret clearance. It taught me binary code, so I got to read the ones and zeros. And then you get to be in a big. At the time, it seemed really cool. You get to be in a vault that was like super secure, so you get to have a code and all this craziness, like in the movies, and you're stuck behind it. So that a lot of that stuff was. Plus they
Was it
wanted.
feed? Was it feeding your inner nerd? Like, was it feeding your
Yeah.
inner
I
geek kind of thing?
yeah, I think so. Yeah. That's what it was. It's like I was like, "Oh, computers. Oh, you get to do all this crazy stuff. Oh, this is exactly what I think I like." And it was not what I liked. So I did it. I went to that school, and I was like, "This sucks, man." And then I went my first duty station. They sent me to Korea for a year, and then I showed up in January of 2000. Uh, yeah, 2000, I believe, or 2001. 2001, and it was freezing. Like it was so much snow, so much it was, and then it comes to find out that it was the coldest winter in like 20, 30 years there. And I was like, "Oh, this is horrible because I'm from the South and in Texas it doesn't snow.
Mm-hmm.
It our winters last 30 to 45 days, and even then like it's 30 degrees. For us we're freezing. Everybody, but the rest of the US and the world's like, "What?" I was like, "That's winter. That's horrible." And they're like, "No, like you don't know what winter is," and I didn't because -10. I wouldn't come out of, like it. It took a lot of people to get me out of my. I was like, "There's no way. My room is freezing already, but you want me
Right.
to go stand outside when it's negative
Right.
10?"
Right.
And they're like, "Yeah, get your ass out here." And I was like, "No," like, so there I am standing outside, -10, freezing, and I'm thinking like, "This is where I die. Like I
Mm.
can't do this." But yeah,
But
it
you
was.
but you did do it,
I
and
did, yeah.
you racked up some years in that part of the military within communications.
Yeah, I did
What
it.
was it? What was it that kept you going? Obviously, there's responsibility, but
Mhm.
did you finally find something that you became attached to, or was it just simply duty for you?
I mean, part of it was duty, was like the job. Like, it's like, okay, I have a job to do, and it's my responsibility. I have to do this. But a lot of it was, you're part of a team. You have camaraderie, and I'm still kind of developing and kind of finding. I wouldn't say finding myself, but at the same time, I'm finding these things that I'm kind of good at. And it's kind of like, to me, I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic, but I have like a drive where I just, as soon as I
Right.
find something new, like I want to
Right.
be able to beat that. Like I want to be like, okay,
Right.
how do I learn that as fast as possible and then beat
So
it? So like,
did you then take it on because you're going from I'm gonna
mhm.
die? Did you then have a switch in you, which is this is a challenge that I have to
Yeah,
pass?
yeah. I mean, I still didn't like, to this day. I still don't like the cold. It's probably why I still live in. I came back to Texas and live in Central Texas where it's hot almost year round. Uh, but there was like, there was other little things that kept me going to a drive, and I I kind of just worked on that. I became like really proficient in my job, for one, and then with that I was able to start. I made some friends uh, in that area, so we were able to kind of like work out. We were doing a little bit of martial arts and a lot of weightlifting.
What martial art
Doing
were you doing?
uh my trying to think what we were doing. I know a little bit. There was this one, actually two guys. It wasn't like I wouldn't say like, it wasn't like ninjutsu or anything, but they were, it was a lot of weapons, and they were, is one of them was a boxer as well. So we were doing a little bit of that, and then kickboxing. And that's where I kind of got my love for like kickboxing as well.
Okay. I just
Um,
the last person I interviewed, Miranda Taylor, if you can believe, he's got two black belts in Taekwondo, and
oh,
I've
nice.
always loved martial arts,
Yeah.
so that was the reason I was asking. Okay, I'm getting the whole thing with communications at Army, and thank you so much for going into that. Tell me how you became the CEO of a humidor.
So while I had, I don't know, as I got older, I was still in the army, and I there was times, I guess, I had a lot. It was a lot trying to come out just now. So um, I always had this drive of like trying to have my own business.
Right.
That was always like a thing in the back of my head, which I didn't think it was going to be a thing. But it just kind of developed. My dad had started this. It was like a, I don't know. It wasn't like a pyramid scheme, but it was like a, it was early 2000s or mid 2000s, and it was this electricity. I forget what the company was, and so we started doing that, and I started seeing how business ran. That's where like it kind of a light bulb clicked. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like a big, like Amway or whatever those other pyramid schemes were. To me, I kept telling him it was a pyramid scheme, but it wasn't. It was more like getting the independent electric companies to switch over and all this other stuff. But you're a contractor, so I was able to learn how to do a lot of the business stuff on the outside just by doing it by hand.
What was it when you were seeing this? Do you remember, if you can remember, what was it that was getting something kind of ticking inside you? Because obviously you already knew about working, making money, but what was it about this? What was the difference? What was the
Um,
allure?
I could make it mine. It was mine. I can put
Right,
my name on it. Um, and that was it was good. It was a small step because I still had that. I can't remember that company. That company's name on my business card. It was a small thing, but it still had my name, and it was still like it was that. And I was, I would be getting the, uh, my website and the paycheck and stuff, but it was still them. It was still theirs.
right,
Um, so after doing that like a year or two, I was just like, man, like I really want to do this. And in that time frame, I had, because right after Korea, matter of fact, I said, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. Sitting behind a desk and all this craziness. I tried out for the NATO Special Operations, and I passed. So they were like, all right, you're going to go to NATO. But then I had stuff at family, and I had to switch out. And they're like, hey, if you want, you can just switch you out with another special operations soldier. I was like, cool. So they sent me to the special forces in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So I went there, and right as I was getting ready to leave uh, Korea, 9/11 happened
right.
for the terrorist attack. So I was in Korea when that happened, and so they're like, all right, a couple months later, they're shipping me to Fort Campbell because I was done with my year in Korea, and then as soon as I get there, they're like, all right, we've read your file, we got all this stuff, what do you want to do? And as I'm this is my first day. I'm still holding my bags to get in, and there's two things. He's like, you can go to work with the commo guys in their office. He's like, and that's where you can be. And then at the same time, I saw these guys rolling up in these Humvees with big old guns, and one guy had a cigar in his mouth, and all this. It was like it was early 2000s, so it was still you could still do that. You cannot do that now, so don't think you
Damn.
can.
Okay.
So they're rolling up, and I was like, what is that? And they're like, oh. He's like, you want to do stuff like that? I was like, yes. You get to shoot guns and do stuff. He's like, yes. He's like, all right. He's like, matter of fact, he's like, scratch the whole office thing. You're going to come over here, and that was my life for the rest of my career. So for 13 years, I was in special operations, doing different things with communications, and I did that for most of it, and then I moved on as I got higher in ranking. I did other things. Um, but that was a big thing for me. So one time it happened with the humidors was that I started smoking cigars while I was in Korea, and then we were we got deployed to the first deployment to Iraq right before the initial push that we went in, and we were trying to keep our cigars because it was so dry there. Our cigars were drying out, so we're using coffee cans. We're trying to use different, everybody had like little humidors, but then they wouldn't really fit in the Humvee, or the people get stepped on or broken, or so I was talking to my dad one time, and I was like, we were talking on the phone. You get to make a phone call every now and then, and so we would just sit around bullshitting. And I was like, yeah, he's like, you want me to send you some more cigars? I was like, yeah. I go, they're drying out and all this stuff. And finally, he's like, son, don't you guys have like ammo cans? I was like, yeah. He was like, why don't you clean one of those out? He's like, aren't they waterproof? I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I think they're airtight too. And he's like, all right. He's like, why don't you try that? So I tried it, and then I called him back a few weeks later. I was like, yeah, it was great, but they taste like shit because they still taste like ammo. And he was like, hold on. He's like, he's like, I tell you what, I'm gonna cut some wood, and then I'm gonna send you some cedar wood up there. So my dad literally sent me cedar wood to Iraq, and so me and a friend sat there and kind of made it wedged in there and worked, and then it worked. So I was like, holy crap! Like, our cigars were great. The only thing is that it was a ammo can. So when you're trying to reload a gun, and you open up an ammo can and there's cigars in it, and especially if it's your boss, He definitely has flavorful words for you that at that moment. But it did work out, and it caught on pretty quickly. And I was making them as gifts to give to people after we got back. And my uncle, which he owns his own taxidermy business, which is a very big taxidermy. Like he is like people from like Alaska send him these huge
Mm.
animals. He had like he gets like these 12, 14 foot alligators and these oh my gosh, they're crazy, like these sea monsters pretty much that he has. But I was sitting there with him. He was like, why don't you just turn it into a business, man? Like you're already doing it. He's like, might as well get paid for your time. And I was like, huh. So then he kind of like helped me kind of work things out, and my dad was guiding me on some other parts of it. And before you know it, within a year or so, I had this humidor business going, and it blew up really quickly. And So at the time, uh, my wife then she was my girlfriend, or my wife now, the girlfriend then. Uh, we started doing it, and we started hand painting them. These ammo cans we're just getting going to pawn shops and surplus stores and buying these ammo cans, and then painting them for like the local area. But then I put them online, and it was like just custom paint jobs after custom paint jobs, and people were buying them. We did uh, we did a couple for Wounded Warriors, that big nonprofit Wounded Warriors, and a bunch of other just definitely a military or kind of first responders related, or just aficionados for cigars, and we were so backlogged and got popular so fast, that we actually I'm gonna leave their name out of it, but there is a humidor company that they specialize in making humidors, that they threatened to sue us, and
I bet.
it was just a mom it was just a mom and pop, me and my wife, and my garage. Like, this is what we're doing, and we're just shipping these off as fast as we can make them, and we're telling people like, hey, you're ordering these, and it's a 6 week period of waiting because we're so backlogged. And so these guys, they sent us letters and try to sue us, and to me it was very exciting, but I was scared at the same time.
For
And
sure, for sure.
you had to see a lawyer. Lawyers like, oh, they're they can't do anything about it. But
Because
after a while,
they were threatened before they threatened
yeah,
you.
yep, yeah, definitely, because we were like, we got famous. I would say famous, but very popular. In that cigar area, and to this day, I still get messages every now and then like, hey, don't you still make humidors? I'm like, no. It was such a headache, and like, very, if I
So
had to.
why did you stop this business then?
Yeah, so when I finally had to hang up my I guess my boots for being in the special operations, I was getting older. I wasn't able to recover as fast, and I had injuries that were not helping. Um, I got picked to go to recruiting, so that kind of helped me make my decision of I was done. So out of nowhere, which usually rarely happens, is getting picked as a recruiter out of the special operations, and I got picked. I was one of those lucky guys.
Why is it rare? Because they don't normally have the skill set for doing it, or
Like, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say skill sets. They just I know I was definitely shocked. Like, I was like shell shocked to go from doing stuff constantly to sit
for sure.
behind a desk.
Which you
And
originally were trying to get away from.
yeah, yeah, it all
they
comes full
keep they
circle
keep
now.
they keep trying to put you behind this desk, right?
Oh
You'll be
man,
great.
it was horrible. It was a horrible experience. Because when we got there, what they don't tell you is that when you're a recruiter, you're home, because that's what they try to sell you. Like, hey, you're home. You never have to deploy. Blah blah blah. I was DA selected, so I didn't have a choice. I didn't. So it was just like, hey, you're doing this now. And I was like,
Mm.
well, this sucks. And I was like, okay, well, at least I'll be home. That was my thing. I was like, maybe, at least I'll be home. I will, get to be with the family. I wasn't. I lived probably less than 5 miles away, and I never saw my family. I worked 7 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, 12, about 12 hours or so a day, give or take. And then my family rarely saw me. A lot of times, my family would come up to our office to give me dinner and stuff. Um, and then when we worked on Saturdays, I really didn't care a lot. Like halfway through it, it's 3 years long, and about halfway through it, I just started bringing my kids on Saturday with me, or something, because I was just like, and
How old were they at this time?
oh man, they were babies, man. I think my son at the time was probably a junior, senior in high school, and then I had three little girls, um, which the youngest was probably 6 months to a year, and
Mm,
then from there it was like 3 4 years old, and then probably it's 7 year old. So I had three
mm.
little girls up there. My son was in high school by then, so I had three little girls, and then I had the other guys as well bring their kids up, so that our higher ups could see that hey, like we're missing our families, man. Like we are definitely. So I set up a TV, I put cartoons on, and like they hated it, but I was just like, okay, well, send us home with our family or keep us here, and they definitely we stay in the office a lot watching cartoons and doing our work on a Saturday. Um, but as I got there, I was working so much. We were becoming so backlogged in the humidors. It was like months backlog. So I finally had to shut the doors, and it was a lot. Like it was very hurtful, I guess, because I was like my baby.
I think it's interesting to speak to somebody who's had to shut what was basically a successful business.
Yeah, it was, and I tell people, they're like, "Why did you shut?" I was like, "Yeah," I was like, "Well, it was very successful," and I, and then we had to shut it because we were, I guess I wouldn't say, I guess it was say too successful, too
Yeah,
fast,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And it was just me and my wife. My wife was the head nurse for a hospital in Houston, Texas, which that's a huge thing, like that those hospitals are very busy. So she was a head nurse there, and then I was working all the time, and then on top of that, we had the kids at the house as well. Um, so it was just like, my wife worked nights and I worked days. So it's like we were coming and going, and just kind of doing that. And trying to run a humidor business was not, finally we just like,
Something had to give.
yeah. So we did that and kind of hung it up. And I kept the business account to the side and kept the money in it and just waited on it. Like I didn't do anything with it. I didn't really, you know, um, mess with it too much. Excuse me. But I kept it there. So as I shut it down after I did 3 years in recruiting, I uh, I got orders to go to Kuwait. So I had to go back overseas for a year. After not seeing my family for 3 years, they were like, "You should probably go away to another country now for a year." And there is when we decided. Like I told my wife, I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna drop in my retirement packet,
Okay.
and I'm getting ready to retire." And then they uh, they promoted me on my way, so I got bumped up another grade, and then I had to stay, in for 2 years to get that retirement uh, pay. So I was like, so I had to wait, extend it for a year. After the Kuwait, I came back. By then, when I was in Kuwait, that's when I started trying to. I filled a lot of my free time. Well, I wouldn't say free time. It wasn't a lot of free time, but I guess the empty space, because I was there by myself. My family was in the states, so the time that I had alone was filled with like me trying to keep my mind busy and
Hmm.
do something. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to, maybe I'll start a business. Maybe I will do. It was little things, and it started as like affiliate marketer. I was like, okay, I can do that. It's like sell somebody else's stuff, it's passive income, and then it kind of just evolved as I was learning more about this. I was like, oh, like digital marketing. I was like, wait a minute. So I started learning more about it, like what goes on behind it. And I was like, oh, this sounds pretty easy, and for me, it was very. I was able to catch on really quickly about it, which I found out that a lot of people, a lot more than I expected, have no idea about it or have no drive to even learn that type of stuff. Um, so and then I learned like what digital marketing was, and that the people actually hire people to do it. And I was like, oh, well, I can definitely do that. Um, and that's where it all kind of snowballed from there. It was like a slow process, and I had it up and running by the time I left Kuwait for that year. So I had clients already lined up or already existing clients by the time I got back. So that's where the marketing, digital marketing, and it kind of from there it evolved to what I have now. I went from
And
like a
what do
small
you have? What
business.
do you have now? How do you describe the digital? Because looking on LinkedIn, it's just digital marketing, and that's it. Yeah. But what has it evolved into? Is it a micro agency? What is your specialization?
So now it beforehand I was doing bigger businesses. They're doing like a lot of them. What I found out was a lot of them needed like social media. They needed a lot of their content. They needed like to keep their businesses growing, and the social influences was a huge thing. And then so I was able to manage their social media and get them more followers, pretty much to kind of like grow their social impressions. And then I was working with a lot of my main goal, what I wanted to do, which it kept veering back to other things, but I was trying to fight to get like to smaller businesses and help them build up. And it a lot of times what I did find out was the smaller businesses. A lot of people don't do the research that they think for their own business, and they want things to happen quickly, which
What do you
that
mean?
does
What do you mean by they don't do their own research? Research about what exactly?
about like how their business should grow, how their proper business plan, how they should expect like what their timeline is. A lot of times they think their business is going to grow within 3 to 6 months, and I'm like, that's not how business grows. Like you have to your foundation might be 3 to 6 months if you're lucky, but that's not that's not feasible. Like you're living in a dreamland. Like that's very hard, and it's very hard to tell people that because they don't want to hear it. And I'm like,
Especially in the times we are now of instant gratification, we can turn on anything and there it is, right? And the
yeah,
comparisonitis of seeing somebody else with something that looks similar to what you want, and hey, they've got a website, and hey, they've got a camera, and hey, they've got a logo. So what's the problem?
yeah. And then you tell them like how much it's going to cost, and they're like, why? I'm like, I'm like, well, you just rattled off a laundry list of things that you want. Like, none of this stuff is free. And it's not to knock them. It's just a lot of times
No,
people they don't know, and then they don't budget their stuff. So they're just like, well, I have this, I have $100 to do it. I'm like, that's, to start a business, you're going to need a whole lot more than that. Like you
for
should have
sure,
been planning and saving up for
for
this.
sure.
And so that was like a big, for me, it was very, I guess, depressing to kind of give
Yep,
people the bad news a lot,
yep.
or just be like, hey, like, okay, we're
Because
going to do this.
you can't take on their issues, and what I mean by that is I was speaking to someone just the other day about I used to work with businesses in the ideation stage, and it was quite exciting, right? Because I'm somebody who, just from the way I was raised or whatever, I can see the potential in others. But I had coaches who taught me over and over again, you can't care more about it than they
Yeah,
care about it. It's like it's never going to work. And I find with people who have ideas, not all of them, I find there are little unicorns within that group, but most of them kind of like come to you and say, hey, I've got this idea.
yeah,
Do your stuff. Do your stuff and make me rich. And it's
yeah,
like, so it's my business then. How much do I
yeah,
get paid? I remember having a conversation with somebody a long time ago, and I said to them, I was trying to do at the time. I don't do this now, but I was trying to do something like profit share. So I had all the goods, I had all the keys to all the engines that's going to make it work, right? So they've come to this idea. I know exactly how to build it up, the branding, whatever, everything. So I said to this guy, if you make a pound or dollar, right?
hmm
If you make a dollar, how much will you give me? And there was silence. The guy was literally trying to calculate shit.
yeah,
So I said to him, okay, how about you give me 40 pence, right? Just 40%. He said no. So I was like, so I'm going to do all of this work and you expect to give me what for it. And it was a real eye opener to people who want the farm, they want the kitchen sink, but
Yeah,
they basically want somebody else to build a business and they have no intention of sharing any of the imagined spoils behind it. And
yeah,
it was a big decision for me to actually, as much as my heart, it was me projecting onto the world around me. There were these people, I think a little bit like me, who had been through stuff, who then I wanted to help. You know, you're disadvantaged, give you a leg up, you'll be amazing, kind of thing. But in actual fact, it was more important to meet people who had already made it halfway. That's when I can really help, or even more than halfway. They have to be go getters. And it became very important for me to stop working with people who just had an idea or a dream because their propulsion for that dream actually was non existent. They were
hmm
requiring me to do it. So even though I had a big heart to help people, I had to realize that some people can't and shouldn't be helped in actual fact.
No, it's that. Yeah, I think I ran into several things like that, and it was a very eye opener because I was the one that tried to make it my business and care for it more than them, and I was screwing myself because I was not making anything out of it. I was spending more time on it, and then a lot of times, man, it was just, you know, I like I was trapped in a lot of these, just working with these people, and then come to find out that I was cutting myself short because I wasn't charging enough, for
There you
what,
go.
and I thought to myself, I was thinking, man, well, I'm charging them a lot, but then I didn't take account into like, how much it's actually costing me and like, time and all these things, other things. I sort of started learning business a little bit better as well. And that was a big deal for me and an eye opener. And I think that was like a lesson that I tried to definitely tell people along with
Who are
that.
your ideal? Who are your ideal clients? Who is the best type of person for you to work with? Obviously, budget is one.
Yeah. I think let's see. That's a good one. I think one of the people that actually have a good plan, like they already have a plan thought out, preferably written out, because then you don't have to kind of remember it all. They know exactly who they are trying to reach, or who their, who their clientele is, or what their goal is. And then when I ask them, like, okay, what's your budget? Like, what are we working with every month? And they can actually tell me without being like, well, guesstimate between 1 and 7. Like that's not a that's a horrible range. Um, and then uh, I guess that not micromanaging, that's a big one. I know a lot of people that I've worked with, and they want to micromanage everything, and I'm like, if you know so much, then you should probably do it yourself, because
For sure.
it's like you're telling me wrong. Like this is why you're not getting to what you want right now, because you're telling me you're doing it wrong and trying to get me to do it wrong. So that was a big thing, and I kind of, I don't know. A lot of times I would just kind of be like, okay, we can't, we're done. This is a good project, and and kind of walk away from it. But if I can if I can do that and kind of have, I wouldn't say hands off, but at the same time let me have the reins while you kind of sit passenger, and so that I can show you exactly what I'll show you, be like, all right, these are the numbers this month, this is what we got, or this is the content that you had available, this is what I worked with, and did that, because I went from working with bigger companies. I even worked with a medical training facility or training company, and they were great. I worked with them for probably 6 months after I retired. They went from very small in the social media and just on the internet itself to like they kind of now they do worldwide training, which is
Wow.
awesome. Um, and then I started working with music artists, which was super cool. Music artists is a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Like they are on a whole nother level. Like business is like scheduled, and they have all these different things, and everything's like, musicians not so much. Like they,
Wow.
I'm the one hounding them, like, hey, I need this stuff, or I need,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, okay, but it was really cool to be a part of that, and like having that backstage access with some of their stuff, and knowing like the ins and outs, and being able to, get them interviews with people, or getting them out there and trying to see their numbers go up, and all that was really cool. And
Who are
then
your main who are your main type of industry that you work with now then? Is there
right
do you have a main type of industry or?
now, well, in this past year, last 6 months or so, I was still working with, like, business. I would say corporate world. This is what I work with now. Is I'm shifting my my focus more on. I want to work with more tech, uh,
Okay.
technology, and tech businesses. One, because they understand the
Mm-hmm.
marketing sense. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
know that it's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
They're not an e-commerce where they want numbers by next week. They're a tech company. They know technology. Technology takes a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get a grasp of what I'm talking about. But and on top of that, in the game, it's more of the gaming industry, with, like, board games or video games, or um, influencers, things like that. I started my own gaming label within this past
So,
year.
but as we've moved on to gaming, tell me
Mhm.
about the shelf behind you. I've been looking at the whole time since we've been
Oh, I didn't.
we've been here. What
So
what is what is all of this? Because you
those
said
are
board games. Because I was trying to work out what they were. Because they're not books. So these are
uh
all board games.
yeah, those are board games. I have, you can't really tell, but I have shelving all the way around the room, and those are a lot of my geek stuff, and um, board games as well. I have, next to me is two big shelves of just books. Some of them are gaming books and whatnot, and then I have two big filing cabinets of things that are gaming profiles type things, files, and uh, maps and
So
things.
let's get into this. You. Okay, there's a lot. Okay, let's start with your T-shirt, Chaotic Chronicles.
Oh,
What is
yeah.
this?
So Chaotic Chronicles is my gaming label. I went from playing with my kids during COVID. We were playing tabletop role playing games like Dungeons and Dragons,
With for
and
the little
yeah,
figurines and stuff like this.
yeah.
So one of I don't know if you remember. Well, you probably do. Being super young, so I think I'm around 12, something like that. And I had my first best friend.
Mm,
Maybe my second best friend because it was primary school. But there was a guy called Jerry Davis, and I remember walking to his house, knocking on the door. His mum opened the door. He said, "Jerry's upstairs." I went upstairs and I found Jerry in his room. It wasn't exactly dark, but kind of dark. But the main focus was a light on a table, and he had a little magnifying glass, and he had the thinnest paintbrush I'd ever seen in my life,
yeah.
and he was painting the shit out of this little figure. And at that age, I was just like, what are you doing? What is going on here? Because toys, geeks, nerd, I'm fine with that, but I'd never seen this before. And he explained this to me. And it went something along the lines of, these are figures for a game, a board game, and these are the characters, cool, and I'm getting them ready. So what? So he would explain to me that when he showed me, and they come through as these die cast, basically no color, and
Hmm.
part of the process was painting, was creating them, and then once they were done, the game could be played, and then everybody, I think anybody who's not been from this world, because I know this world, then I think the last time, even watching it with my kids, Stranger Things, was the whole Dungeons and
Yeah,
Dragons and that kind of thing, and the book and
yeah.
interactive books, which I don't think a lot of people have had an experience of, because
Hmm.
again, the nowadays version of that would have been what Netflix did. They had I think one version of maybe Black Mirror, I think, and then they had
Oh, yeah,
Bandersnatch at one point where you could choose how the story went at
yeah. Kind
certain
of, yeah.
points in it.
Hmm.
But there used to be books,
Yeah.
right? Where you would be reading it, and at some point you get to choose it. You'd have to go to that page.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing stuff, which requires a lot of imagination, which sometimes I miss those days. I go back to looking at games, showing my kids games,
Hmm.
and they're literally like, why does that character look so sharp? Like there's just about this picture kind of pasted over the polygons kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it through their lens and just trying to get them to understand, dude. And I told my son, I think from the last Call of Duty, and we just started watching Arcane, which is an incredible animation. But the more realism there is, the less imagination,
Yeah.
which is something that in the day, even when I go back to Spectrum or Commodore 64 games, waiting for games to load off a tape, right? And
Yeah.
playing the hell out of it and loving it. And there were literally no graphics to a
Yeah.
certain extent. And then when I take it even back further to board games, which is something for us as a family we've tried to do more of. I'm looking at
Mhm.
your shelf and just like, there's that many board games in the world.
Oh
Like, what the
man,
fuck?
like my wife has to stop me from getting them. Like I constantly want to buy more. Like there's like, oh man, and it's
So
just
you took a love of board games. It's something that you brought to your children. So I absolutely love that. You introduced them to an analog version of gaming. I, I,
hmm
I love that because I think beyond checkers or chess or playing cards, I think when it comes down to video games, especially any video games that require critical thinking or strategy, their grandfather is the board game,
hmm
right? Of that strategic role playing turn based kind of game. So I love the fact that you brought your kids into it, but what was it that took you from your personal enjoyment actually turned it into an actual company?
um what it kind of developed into as we did it throughout the time. It was almost almost a year of shutdown or 9 months or whatever for COVID. We were doing it every one. Well, we were doing like once or twice a week. And
Okay.
then and it was more of like me just kind of making up the rules and having our miniatures and kind of like building it up. And I was writing. I was using a lot of my writing material, and I've been writing for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I see here that you've been a fiction writer for something like 20 years.
yeah, I started.
Which
I
I was trying to work out where to fit it into the conversation because I'm like, I can listen to him and I can get it, but my brain is like asking, where did he find the time to
uh,
do this? When you're saying you were stationed by yourself, I thought you would start saying it was then, but it's been a long time you've been.
yeah. It's just like I have so much like I have like right now I have so many files and Word documents and like uh spiral notebooks and things like that. Just sometimes you just sit there and you write a paragraph, or sometimes you write a couple pages, and you just constantly working on it. My mind is constantly going. My wife says I got the Tony Stark syndrome, where he's like always like moving, like that's my mind is constantly going 100 miles an hour, and that's where a lot of it came from. So when I was making these adventures for my kids, I was constantly rewriting. I was writing still,
Mm,
and then when I retired and we moved here, and we actually moved a mile away from my sister, which she had at the time. She had three kids living with her, um, and her three boys. So then they would come over. So then I had my three girls and her three boys, who had six kids here, and I was writing these huge elaborate adventures, and I had the miniatures, and I had castles, and I had this huge table, and I'm doing all this stuff for the
amazing.
kids. And I was writing, and finally I was kind of just reaching out in social media, and I was like, hey man, like, do you want to check this out and see if this makes sense? And after a while, a couple of people were like, man, how come you're not like writing this? How come you're not making actual professional stuff? And I was like, I have no idea. Like that didn't even. I was still a fan in that world, and they were just like, no man, you like really need to like run the. One guy was like, I made your adventure into one of my sessions, and they loved it. I was like, oh crap, man. So I kind of learned how to develop it, and then I started making little smaller adventures and putting them online, and people started buying them, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And so it kind of boosted my confidence, and so finally I was more brainstorming, wanting to do more about these things, and finally I was just like, man, I'm gonna make a label. Like this is gonna I want to put my label on the adventure, and I want it to be mine, and I want it to do all these things. So I had a friend with me while I was developing this. I made a friend, which he is now part of Chaotic Chronicles, um, and he his name's Dan. So I was like, told Dan like, man, like, I need to do these things, and he helped me kind of like get it, underway, like some of these things, and uh, finally, I we started making a project and all these things, and by then, my social media kind of following was starting to kind of get bigger with all the different projects that I've been carried on through over the years, and all these different things. Um, and at the same time, I started developing this group on Discord. It's a small. It was a small community at the time. It is now over 100 members worldwide, and it's a community to help other creators. That's our main
Okay.
purpose. So
Okay.
we help other
Help
creators
help
get
them
exposure,
help them how?
get more exposure. We help them
Okay.
to get on the right path. A lot of people don't know where to start or how to start or where to go. Um, we have so many different type of artists, as in like we have writers, we have
Mm-hmm.
artists, we have musicians, we have poets, we have podcast hosts, YouTube channels and their hosts. We have we have people that work in Hollywood. We I have a friend of mine, Timothy. He is probably one of the most decorated and awarded authors on Amazon right now. He has, gosh, I don't know how many books, but he has like his is like a futuristic fantasy saga, kind of like Star Wars, I guess. It'd be close to it.
What's his full name? Timothy.
Timothy, you're gonna make me look bad now. Uh, I'll have to let me pull up my Discord while I'm talking.
Do that.
So
And
he
what's the Discord called?
it's a Dungeon Scribe Society. It's a
Okay.
private group, so if
That's what that is.
anybody,
Okay.
yeah, so if anybody's wanting to know more, definitely hit me up. We'll have my info in the description, and you guys can reach out to me. We just had to make it private because the
Because the internet.
yeah, we actually had to cut people out, man. It was really it was getting pretty bad, um, and I couldn't do it anymore. Like these people were just uh, being pretty hateful. Okay,
Yep, yep,
his
yep.
name is Timothy Ellis.
Got
Okay,
it.
so
Nice.
Timothy Ellis, check him out on Amazon. His books are crazy, man. Like, and what he does is he takes the time because he is like, I'm telling you, like this guy, he is like probably like the science fiction Stephen King, probably, if you think something like that. And what he's doing now, in this group, when he has time, he has a small little, I guess, a little channel or something in our server, and he helps authors, inspiring authors, to kind of help them grow and give them pointers and give them all these different things. Uh, so that was that. So as I was growing this community, I was doing Chaotic Chronicles and building that, and I was getting help. Like, hey, so business wise, I could do it, but building a label, a lot of these other guys knew what they were doing. And so I was getting help with them. At the same time, I was doing my marketing thing, and then I was, as we did that, the podcast host for the show SideQuest was like, "Hey, I would like to have a new host if we can,
And
I want."
What's side quest about?
SideQuest is a podcast that we talk about, things in the TTRPG and geek culture. Um,
Yo,
the,
what? The what?
the
The
TTRPG, tabletop role playing games.
okay.
Sorry, yeah.
All of a sudden I couldn't understand letters. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we talk about those. We have guests from all over the world. Actually, last week I believe was probably the most craziest episode we had. There's a in the UK there is a improv show called the Side Quest Show, which is crazy because that's our
Okay.
show. And what they do is they play Dungeons and Dragons live on
Okay.
stage, improv by the audience. So it's like
Wow.
it's yeah, so it's a comedy show, and a lot of people that are into that type of thing, they which they sell out. Apparently, it is a huge thing, and they're going to start traveling, doing like world tours a little bit. Um, so that was a huge, and have them on the show. It was, God, I never laughed so hard on the show. Usually, I try to keep my composure and try, my side laughs are kind of to the side, or just very mild. Man, like I had to step away for a minute. Like these guys were just hilarious, and I was like, God, man, like I told him, I was like, look, to come back on, it's going to be a couple months because I cannot have you guys on here all the time. And my partner, he couldn't. He at times he was like, Mike, you got to take it. You got to take this right now because I can't. And he's laughing too hard, so but we have a lot of people on shows, like other people that have their own shows, or other people that have like live stream shows. There's a show kind of like Critical Role. That's a big one. Like they have their own show and cartoon and everything. So we have people that do that, and they come on. We've had people that do audio dramas. They come on the show and talk. It's just a huge thing. Like we have people that would like in the business industry. Like we have a guy that runs or has his own business, and what he does, he he helps people that are like they call dungeon masters, which they actually take care of the table, like they do the story and they run the game. What they do is he finds them tables and they get paid. They get to do this from
Incredible.
yeah, so they get to turn
Was
their
it like a
passion.
dungeon master agent?
Kind of, yeah, yeah. Uh, so that was like a huge thing. Like we had him on the show, and so we're actually seeing how this can help people. And as we
For
doing
sure.
that, the side quest show was kind of going downhill. Like it was not. It was very stagnant and going not to diss on my partner at all. Like it was just a show that he was kind of trying to hold together, and it was he was trying to do it by himself, but he had these other co-hosts that weren't doing very well.
Hmm.
So he was kind of doing it himself. So he kept it afloat himself. And then when he asked, he was like, "Yeah, who wants to do it?" And I was like, "Man, I've never done it, and I'm trying to get into this, and I'm trying to build this." And by then, like, I'm already starting to get a little bit of traction on just like, my own following, and people are like trying, starting to reach out to me. And he was like, "Great, you're hired. You're hired. Just like, all right, let's just check it out, man." And we did it, and from there, like me and him became really good friends, me and Rob, and we have a plan of just like certain things, and he's more of the tech guy. He sets up our episodes and all that, and I'm more of the scheduler. I get the people out there, and I'm more of like the front end, and to kind of I use just for my advantage. I kind of use like my leeway of like the front face, so I can like actually be like, all right, this is I'm on this show, like like so people don't think that we're just some schmucks trying to do this. We're able to kind of use these things, and he also has his own gaming label as well, so that kind of helps with that. And
So how long have you been doing the co-hosting for?
co-hosting, we started. Man, it was before. It's probably like May, I guess.
Oh, it's quite new.
Yeah. So
Okay.
what we do is I know he hates when I say it. Like so we record every week, every Thursday, but we release our episodes every other Saturday. So just in case, because we have buffers for life and things like
For sure.
we couldn't do it. Um,
What?
but
Why does
as
he? Why does he hate?
because he wants the show to sound like we're constantly like
Ah, right,
uh,
yeah. But
so
this is back to what you were explaining earlier, which I think is a very important role when it comes down to helping people get from point A to point B, which is giving them the actual realistic look at things, which is it's going to take time to be done
yeah,
well, right? My thing is sometimes we have to go slow to go fast.
yeah,
There's also the fact of not just getting it done but getting it done well. And even for myself, I was speaking to Miranda Taylor, an absolutely amazing person who spent some time after a recording to say to me, hey, get yourself a VA to help with editing and so on and so forth. And it's true, you do need another person involved because
mm,
there's a lot involved in producing something. And I think it's back to our experiences of things like TV, right? And I've been one of those people who's just like, what do you mean the next season's not coming out for 2 years? It's like, but dude, they've got
yeah,
to film it, right? Like,
yeah,
shit's got to be done to actually get it on the screen. And I think it's no different for what you're doing. So I understand from his point of view, getting it to the world. But then
hmm
there's also, like you've said, just life and talking about life with everything you're talking about here. And this thread of you've had two massive vertebrae in your life. One has been the army up until a certain point, but the other thing has been family
Hmm.
with your children, your wife. How have those two things impacted each other? So your kind of business endeavors,
Hmm.
how have those helped you maybe be a better father, better husband? And on the flip side, how has your marriage and your family life kind of helped steer your business life in the right way?
I think in the beginning, it takes it's a big I would say kind of like a wrestling match to see, because you have these things, and these two important things in your life, and you want them to be the priority, but you can't have both.
Right.
You have to like take. There has to be certain times and different things, and that was like a big thing. So in while I was in the army doing this, um, so I had the army, I had my family, and then I was trying to start a business at the same time.
Right.
So it was very a lot of tension. It was very a lot of headaches, a lot of late nights, and it was just it was very hard. Like a lot of people don't tell you how hard and difficult it is. Like it's going to be extremely hard and a
Mm-hmm.
very big struggle and very stressful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and while doing that, so there was a gap with my digital marketing. There was about like a year and a half that I kind of temporarily closed the doors because I was getting ready to retire. I was trying to get my family situated in like the uh, entire retirement phase, and then me just kind of coming home because I've been gone for so long.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get me and my wife, you know, back on track and trying to like very in like a stressful situation, especially COVID and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
sucked. Um, so as we were doing all of that, getting all that situated, um, you just you kind of for me, I kind of like made a schedule. That was like a big thing. I kind of I try to do the scheduling, um, and kind of build up to that. Now, which when I'm retired, that was like that. I initially was going to be, I was going to go contract and be like security, like stuff that I got certified for, stuff that I was going to do. I did, and then after when I was in COVID, I was like, man, like I kind of like being home now, and I was actually in the process of retiring. So that's when I was just like, well, I'm gonna pick up the marketing thing again. I'm gonna start doing it so I can work from home. I can be a stay-at-home dad. I want to be able to work from home and adjust my schedule to the kids. Um, I know my son growing up, I missed a lot of his life because I was
Yeah.
deploying, I was gone, I was working all the time, and now it's like, okay, I have these three girls now and my wife, and I was like, man, I really want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And even now, I mean, not saying it's a cakewalk because there's still, there's still stuff that happens and tension and stress and things like that. And uh, it helps me keep my vision. I have a goal for this. Like, I want this to be able to pay for Disneyland and stuff. I'm retired. I'm 100% disabled from the military as well. So my bills and everything are paid with my retirement. It's kind of like me working full time already, and this is like these are my goals for the marketing and the gaming label is what I want on the side. That will be our extra. Like this is going to be my
Nice.
family, and that's my goal. It's not like I
Do
don't.
you with the family? Do you find? I think you're always driven, but from my personal point of view, I've called my family the board, my board of directors of happiness, and it's stressful, but they provide a lens of focus on everything
Hmm.
that just changes how I approach things, because I think maybe without the family in tow, maybe certain things that are stressful will just be dropped for something easier or different, or I don't know.
Yeah, it
But
would
for
be.
you, if right?
Yeah, I think 100%. Yeah, because one, I chose to not go to work, a traditional job or whatever whatever, um, to work work from the house or work from a studio or work from somewhere. I choose to kind of keep my. I try like to stay in this area here. It's a game room, which is where I get my inspiration, things like that. I have an actual office and stuff, but I don't spend a lot of time there. I like this so I can see out the window. I can see all my inspiration and do that. And the kids are here when they're off. They get my girls sit on the floor sometimes or sit at
It's
the table
beautiful.
with me. And they're my wife and kids are my drive, like they, because I want to be, like I said, like I want to be able to afford to, like, like, all right, we're going to Disney World again this year, like, or I
Yep.
want, like, I want to be able to have, the bills are paid for, and like we don't have to worry. I don't want to be like, I guess, like the word, I don't want to be like filthy rich. I'm not trying to be
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
bazillionaire, but I definitely want to be able to have all my bills paid for
Mm-hmm.
and take my family out to a ribeye steak dinner every night for the rest of my life.
Nice.
Like those are my goals. Like that's
Yep.
what I
Yep.
want, and I
Yep.
have and I don't want to work for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even though I allow myself 4 to 5 hours a day to sit here or do something, be on these shows with people like you, and I think those are types of things that help me build to get that traction, and get these things. And if one day, God willing, I'm able to step away, maybe one of my kids can take over. That'd be great. If not, then maybe I'll sell it, and in my old age, be able to sell it, and they can, do whatever. But I think that's my big drive, because I'm just like, okay, well, I want to be able to take my kids out. I want them to have those nice things. I want them, I want to be able to have my grandkids, you know, be able to spoil them for sure. My wife, uh, she's a wonderful lady. She's a wonderful wife. And she does, and a great mother. She doesn't have to work, so that's like, that's a blessing in itself. She's able to be here for the kids, do the shopping, because if Dad was doing shopping, cereal, waffles, and pancakes, like, and steaks and burgers, like that would that would be dinner. Uh, so she's able to do that, and I'm very blessed that we have everybody underneath one roof. We're healthy. We have a house, um, and a very stable location.
Absolutely beautiful, man. You've spoken openly about your advocacy for ADHD, dyslexia, PTSD, TBI, which I don't know what that is, and autism. How have these personal experiences shaped your approach to leadership and building communities?
Um, it worked. I mean, to me, I get to see things in a different perspective. TBI is traumatic brain injury. So growing up, I had dyslexia, and they that was something they didn't really learn until later in junior high, because I'm a child of the '80s, man. Like, we're both in our 40s. Like, in the that didn't even exist. So I was, by then I'm already in junior high and stuff, and they're like, oh, he's dyslexic, and then come to find out, I'm an adult, and they're like, oh man, you have ADHD, just crazy. And then they're like, okay, well, there's different things, there's different parts of ADHD, there's different parts of dyslexia. Then how's your brain work? Um, so you're able to kind of see things in a different perspective, and try to see, and you get to see other people, and that's my thing. So I'm like, okay, you know, uh, you can actually talk or relate to somebody, differently, because sometimes they don't. A lot of people don't understand them,
Hmm.
and you're able to be like, hey, I get it. I understand exactly what you're saying, or I see what you're doing. So that's a big thing.
Are any of your
And
children affected by?
yeah, my daughter actually, my middle daughter, she has ADHD, and she's like me. Like, she's up early in the morning. She's going. She's an 11 at all times, just constantly just moving and going, all the way up until she passes out at night. Like, that's her, and that's the same way for me. I'm up at the crack of dawn. I'm moving. I'm constantly. If I sit down long enough, I pass out. Like, I'm on the go, or I'm asleep. Like, there's no middle ground for me. Um, so that's, for me, it's my superpower. I get to
For sure.
constantly go. But the cool thing
But
is that I'm at.
do you think that your awareness, because that kind of what you've talked about for me sounds like compassion for others.
No.
Maybe they're not walking up to you with a label that says I have this, but your own experience. allows you to say, hey, one, everybody's going through stuff, let alone what you've seen in your career,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everybody's going through stuff. But do you think that your own awareness of what you have as what originally were called disabilities, but now you see as superpowers, rightly so, do you feel that it gave you a kind of heightened sense of compassion for others?
Yeah, I can see it. Like, I at first, with my daughter, she was very, very difficult. When she was little, because we didn't really know. We just, she was just hyper and like, okay. And as she got older, and then me and my wife started looking at a little bit more because she was able to articulate more, and she was able. I was like, okay, she definitely has ADHD. And then before we had her got her diagnosed, she was I was able to talk to her more, and a lot of times I was able to kind of explain to her like why she was thinking things or why she was, I'm like, hey, like what's going on through your head, or like why did you do that, or why, what's going on, and then a lot of times I can be like, well, I think you're thinking this because of this or something. And a lot of times she was shocked, like she's like, I can't believe you know what I'm thinking. I'm like, yeah, because I thought that, and I just thought I was crazy, like, but so with that, and it's a lot more resources as well out there now. Like, there's so much more. Um, there's like a book my wife had got for her, or something. I forget. It's like the ADHD Dragon or something. It's like a little kid book. Um, that probably title's probably completely wrong, but but it's about a kid with ADHD, and they have this dragon. And I think the dragon's imaginary. I don't know. I don't remember. But but my daughter has read it, and she, we kind of talk about it, and it kind of helps her as well, kind of relate. But she knows there's times that she has come to me off, just by herself, and been kind of like had a question, or sometimes she just wants to sit with me because, like, and I know there's something, and she just needs somebody to kind of like be there on her level, or something, and I'm able to kind of relate to her and kind of talk to her. And there's been other people as well now that kind of been speaking out on it, and they as well talk talk about it. We had a guest on our podcast as well for now divergent type people, and they actually make board games for him as
Okay.
well. And so we had him on there, and it was really cool, man. And I like talking with them. So it was nice. And I was thinking, man, like my daughter would be great to have these things. So um, it was really good. Like I was able to kind of help relate to people on some of these things. That's the biggest thing, is just kind of relate, or just being there to be like, yeah, I have it too, and let them kind of talk. That's the main thing.
And so as someone who's experienced significant challenges, including being a 100% disabled combat veteran, how have those struggles influenced your resilience and perspective on life?
Um, I think the biggest thing is what I see, what I see a lot, and that I don't like. It just drives me nuts. Is like people that are just I guess lazy and make excuses. They allow these things to kind of just like control their life, or they kind of just like roll over and be like, well, this is it. This is what I have. And for me, it's like, I have chronic pains. I have all these, there's nothing, it doesn't look too physical until I actually start pointing them out to you. Um, so it doesn't like, it's like I'm not missing any limbs or anything. But it's a lot of it, like I have chronic, like I think I was diagnosed with like arthritis in my 30s.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I have chronic back pain and joints and all these different
Yeah,
other
because I saw
things.
you stretching at one point, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Like I'm constantly
okay.
moving, because if I stay still, stand too long, or like stand still, or sit too long, I start to like tense and lock up. So I always kind of, you see me like
It's
constantly
interest.
moving.
It's interesting you're saying that because I've been talking about it for years. I used to be a security officer. I spent 2 years doing that. I was at one point, believe it or not, I was a hairdresser for like 7 years. It's a lot of standing.
Yeah,
But in my later life, what's happened is if I'm washing up at the sink, I actually can't stand there for like longer than 2 minutes before my back starts giving pain. So I have to teeter. I
yeah,
have to keep moving from leg to leg to actually make it okay. And even when taking the kids when they were younger to school, By the time I was on my way back, only a 10-minute little journey, on my way back, it just had this chronic pain in my back, and then I have to get back, and I'd have to sit down so gently, and then there was a little bit of comfort to find out later it was sciatica or something with
Yeah.
some kind of vein at the back. So I totally get that. It's what we do to our actual bodies over time. It's kind of crazy. But let me ask you this: when you think about what you've done so far, and you've got a lot of life in front of you, God willing, what legacy do you hope to leave, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a mentor, advocate, and father?
Um, I kind of I wanted to, um, I guess, leave this kind of imprint, on people. I don't want. I see a lot of people, especially growing up, where like being the bad guy was cool, and you know, and that's where like a lot of people. I don't know. I wouldn't say fear you, but they have this impression on you, and that was I don't know, man. Like that doesn't really at the time it seemed cool. Growing up in the '80s, like that was a huge thing. If you watch, if you see all of our movies and everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, what was the eye opener for me was back in so my grandfather died in 2014, and then my brother was murdered back in 2017.
Oh, sorry to
Um,
hear this.
and then uh, and then my dad had died right after I retired. So 2022, I think, or 20
Wow.
something like that. I can never remember. It just happened. I think 2 years ago or so. And so what the significance of that those things are is um, when they died, people talked about their life, like how much they loved them. My dad's thing that everybody said at his funeral was that he had the best smile and the best hug they have ever had. My dad
Beautiful.
my dad was he would shake he was massive. He was a 6'6", 285, just massive. He had these his fingers were like bratwurst, and it was like huge like baseball mitt hand. He was massive. He was a huge guy. He made me look so small next to him. I'm like, and I everywhere I go, like I'm the big guy, but him not so much. Like it's massive. But he came off as like that gentle giant. Like people would see him and like shit their pants, and then as he walked up, he would smile and shake your hand, and then when he was done with talking with you, he would give you a hug. Like he didn't shake your hand, he gave you a hug, like a full bear hug. Like it was massive, and that's what people remembered him by. My brother was a very advocate, was a big advocate for veterans. He got out. He was disabled. Uh, he did I think 11 years or so in the military. He was also in these special investigators department for like in the bureau in the Air Force. So he did a lot of like the undercover work and stuff. And he when he died, they everybody talked about like how helpful he was. How genuine he was. How much how happy he smiled a lot. He did all he joked around. Like he was very genuine, very just a good person. And my grandfather, they he was very part of the community. He was a deacon, like one of the head deacons in the church. He did like the Lions Club. He was a retired military. He did a lot of veteran. He met with veteran stuff. He met with people. He did all these things, and all three of them at their funeral had people just lined up to get inside to try to be part of the funeral. Like, my brother when he died, uh, his funeral had a mile long court, like
Wow.
just like trying they people were trying to get to the gravesite while we were having the service, and by the time we were already done and had taken the coffin there, and people were still trying to get in, they didn't know that it was already over with. And
Wow.
the same, with my dad and grandpa, there's people lined up, outside. So those things I see like as I got older and going through these changes, like retiring, that was a huge headache and culture shock, and it was I hit a really big low in my life,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because it was just a big shock going from 100
Yeah.
miles an hour to nothing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now seeing those three men, those they had genuine good hearts, and they all had their dark times, but they were able to at the at their all the way up to their last minute, they were able to leave a great impression on people, and
Yeah.
people remember that for years. Um, so, and to me, like, I want my kids to remember me as a good person, as a happy dad, to do fun things. I don't want to be the angry guy that just sits on the couch, and bark orders or anything. I do you know I try to do as much as I can with the kids so they can see I'm at every practice or every game. I pick them up from practice, take them to practice. I'm up every morning with them. In the morning, I'll even walk them out to the bus station and just sit there with them. I don't have to, but I do it anyways. And we try to do regular game nights if we can, or movie nights. And every Sunday we have our Sundays. So I make them ice cream and Sundays every Sunday. They sit down while I make them their ice cream and give it to them. Like that, those little things is what I remember my dad doing for us. Like he
Right.
was the one that got me into board games, and he was the one that did like the movie thing and do these little projects and stuff. Like my dad was the one that kind of gave me that hint, like that's what I needed. That's what a dad does, is these little things. And as I got older, I kind of taken them more. When you're young, you don't know what the hell you're doing.
It's
Uh,
interesting. It's interesting you're talking about that, and that your dad passed that on to you. But I just find this to be so beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. But it's interesting because what's come to mind is you talked about the generation we're from, but I don't think it was long before that generation that all the man was supposed to do was just go out and get work,
hmm
just bring the money home. That
yeah,
was that was it. But you've said something I don't really hear much about that wasn't highlighted so much, but those important memories, gestures, and moments with your children. You're telling me that your dad, either directly or indirectly, passed that on to you, which you now pass on to your children.
yeah, yeah. I remember probably all the way, probably the last couple of years, before he died, I would send him pictures, text messages. We would chat, regularly, and his thing that he always said was, it's like, he was like, make those memories, son, make those memories, and constantly just said it. And I didn't really get it until shortly before he passed. Like I was still kind of moving kind of fast, but I
Yeah.
was still doing it because I knew that that's what you're kind of supposed to do. But I was still learning, and then before he passed away, like that's when I was just like, I get it. It was like, aha, like, okay, I get it. Like kids are getting old, like they're remembering because then as they got older, they started telling us about memories about
For
when they were
sure.
little, about little things, and I was like, I get it because then I started sharing my memories with my dad, and like growing up and doing these little things and like some of the funny stories or some of the those times that my dad got mad, but it was like a
Yeah,
funny thing
yeah,
later.
yeah,
You're just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, he was
yeah,
so angry, like, but it
yeah,
was a dumb thing because the kids were dumb.
yeah.
So it was like those things, like, and I was like, oh man, like I get it now. Like I definitely do it. And I tell my kids that. And I actually I had made this statement about making memories to my kids actually this past Saturday. Have you seen the show, the movie, The Greatest Showman?
No,
Um,
I haven't. No, I know I'm
okay,
aware of it, but I haven't seen it yet. No.
all right, so it's a huge musical. I didn't think
Yeah.
I was gonna like it, but my kids made me sit there and watch it because they
Right.
know every damn song. But it was actually a really good movie. I advise you to watch it sometime.
Thank you.
They had a small orchestra come to San Antonio, Texas this past weekend. So I bought tickets months in advance. I was like, oh man, like the kids are gonna love it. So for my birthday gift, which was in October, my birthday gift to them was I surprised them with tickets, and I was like, hey, I bought you guys tickets for my birthday. Like this is my surprise to you. I'm gonna get you guys. We're gonna go see the orchestra play the Greatest Showman soundtrack, and it was huge, like a huge ordeal. And like the kids loved it. Like they sang. There was no singing a lot. They had a couple singers, but they were up singing. Like people are there to see this music, but my girls were singing. So it was great. It was a big thing, and I told them like afterwards, like, hey, I did this. I was like, not. I told them I was like, this is not to brag, but the tickets would have cost us like a day in an amusement park. Like we could have went to Six Flags for the day, but this is only like a 2 hour show. I was like, I did this because I want you guys to actually have these type of memories of like something really special. Like you're not going to see this every day. You're not going to be able to talk about this. I go, and then hopefully you can tell your kids about it, and then you guys can actually, take your kids to these orchestra things. And I was like, I just want you guys to be able to cherish this moment, like these special things that me and your mom do. Like I want you guys to have these. Like I want you to have these moments and be able to talk about them later, and look back and see what you've done, or what we've done as a family. And I explained a little bit more, but that was like the gist of it. And the girls, they sat there for a minute, and like without me having to say anything, they're like, "Thank you, Dad.
Nice.
Thank you so much." And for me, the highlight of that night was me. I was sitting there in my chair while my girls were just like singing, like up and at, they're just like, all three of them. And like my oldest one, she's very quiet. She doesn't really, you know, doesn't do much, but she was very animated. While the two younger ones were, doing their normal thing of just being out, very colorful. So it was really great. Like I had a smile on my face the entire night. So those things is something that I try and strive to do, because I want my kids to have that same type of those memories, those core memories that they have. They can look back and tell those stories to their kids. Uh, like your grandpa did these crazy things, and he would do this, and uh, I want them to be able to have that, and on top of that, they can have a house that they can come to. It's not, we're a family. We have our stressful times. We have our disputes and arguments, and yesterday they didn't want to take a shower at a certain time, but we have those things, and I want them to know they can look back and be like, you know what, as all the bad things that I thought that we were doing because I didn't want to take a shower right at that moment. We actually had a very safe home. We had a great home life. Um, we didn't have to go through. We didn't struggle. They didn't. I tell my kids all the time, like, you guys don't understand what it is to struggle. Like,
Mm,
you guys don't have to worry about that.
mm,
I was like, and I had to the what I felt. I told my wife, I go, one of the greatest highlights so far of having this family is that we had to sit down and actually explain what welfare and food stamps were.
right,
Like my girls have no idea what it
right.
is, and I tell them, I was like to me, I'm the sole provider. Like I have the income and pay the bills, and I told her, I was like, doing all of these things, like, to me it's like a very highlight. Like my kids don't need a want. They
Hmm,
don't have a
hmm,
want,
hmm.
and what they want, they don't have any need being unsatisfied. Um, and to me, as being the provider, like it's a really big thing. And I tell them, I'm like, man, when you get older, you're going to realize these things. I was like, and I want you uh, to not take them lightly, because I want you to kind of strive for these types of things as well. But at the same time, I want you to be to be an example for other people, in a
Nice.
positive manner. And that's where I try to point my family towards, is definitely being positive, and look, trying to help others as well. Um, we do the little community type things with the Christmas gifts, and uh,
As a family, right?
as
This is
as a
what,
family,
yeah.
yeah. So my girls went this past weekend, and we went and bought gifts for there's no name, we just get boxes, and we package up some gifts, and then we take them and drop them off so they can someone can get them for Christmas. Um, we do that every year and let the girls write a note, and if they want a pen pal, they can they get a pen pal and stuff, and that's like I try to get them to do these things, and I want them to kind of see exactly what the world is like, and what good people actually do, because there's a lot of negative, and
For
I
sure.
don't want my kids to kind of think that that's the world, because for
I
me,
think you've hit the nail on the head there that there is a lot of negative, but what you're doing there, if I may, is you're also helping your children understand that they have an influence on
yeah,
that. They can push back on it. They can provide a positive to cancel out some of that negativity. What you're doing is a beautiful thing. What you're, like you've said, I've know people, we talk about it here, the importance of the balance between, we want our kids to, my wife talks about it all the time. She's somebody who, the kids are like, Mom, don't buy anything more. We're all right. But at the same time, she says to them, she wants them to have what she didn't have.
yeah,
We both come from less than modest means, so we want that. But at the same time, what you've said is something that I echo here in the house, which is it's important for my children to understand that nothing's given, also,
Mm,
that you do have to work for things, and also self respect, looking after yourself, but also looking after others, right? That whole thing about family, community, society, in the sense that what can I do to actually help somebody else with not even looking for anything back sometimes. I don't want you to be a doormat for anybody, but at the same time, I don't want you to grow up an absolute a-hole because you're only concerned with yourself and you're feeling completely entitled because you've always just been given stuff, right? Because your
yep.
parents are trying to project their feeling of their children not suffering, where in actual fact, I remember DMX from years ago, one of his songs within moderation, to suffer is to grow. And
Mm,
within those moments of adversity that we have, or any problems that we have, and problem solving, right, we just become better people. So you seem to be providing with a nice, healthy balance, and that bit where you've taken them somewhere, and you've said it's not to brag, but you really want them to understand the moment, not because you're a hero,
mm,
but for them to not, and for me with the kids, 17, 21 that live with us now, 29 is with his own life with his girlfriend, just come back from Japan. And I remember saying to somebody, my son's gone to Japan. I didn't pay, right? I think I've done a good job somewhere, right? He's gone by himself, come back by himself. But with the two that are here, things like your mum's over there working, go and don't even ask her, just make her a tea.
mm,
Just take the tea over, just lay it by on the table. It's always been important for me to develop that part of compassion, empathy, and looking after themselves is totally important, especially having boys, but also fighting against them growing up where they only look after themselves and don't really have that fiber of looking after others.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's
I
a big
think for
thing.
you, you've been a great example of that. I'm really really pleased to have been speaking to you today. I told you it was going to be a great one. Well, it's been absolutely amazing for me. I've got two more questions for you. The
Okay.
first one is the random question. The random question is where I'm going to give you no, I'm going to ask you to give me a number between 1 and 8, and then I'm going to ask you the question.
All right. Uh,
1 and 18. Sorry,
118. Okay. Let's go with 14.
14. Okay. What's the most unusual client request or project you've ever had?
Oh man. Uh, let's see. Um, I think man. So I would say two that were kind of at the time were kind of off the walls when I first started doing the marketing, and I was kind of just at the time, when you start, you kind of just take whatever you can get. Uh, so the first one was a before this whole CBD and all those edibles and everything became a big thing. Like that, he was doing this. This guy was doing Crom. It's kind of almost the same, almost in the same department, and like, and that was a big like I didn't really know, but he was like, I needed the this and this it's a supplement and blah blah blah, and I was like, oh great, I work out, I take supplements. I thought and I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And then after I took on the job, I was doing more of the research, and I was just like, okay, well, this is definitely not a supplement. Like, and people were just, and it was really hard to try to market, these people, and I was like, oh my god, what did I get myself into? But it worked. I got it to work out. It took me, I did a lot of research very fast, like, and this was before like definitely without like the Google. Like Google wasn't as fast as it wasn't as deep as it was now. Like it's super easy now, but when we were doing that, like I was just like, oh crap, like what am I? I needed help and tried to, I reached out to people, and so that was a big one. Like that, I was not ready. So now I do a lot more research when I talk to my clients. The other one was this lady. She told she I took it on as a challenge because I thought this was going to be fun, and it was more of a headache. She proposed that she was kind of a self-proclaimed psychic because she was in an
Okay.
accident, and it was all this wazoo stuff. Like it was crazy. Like she had her fame was that she was on one or two interviews about it. which now I can tell that I can see that that's not a lot, like you're playing with fortune type thing. And but I was very intrigued about it, and she was one of those micromanagers as well. And I was like, if you're a psychic, you would you would know what I'm gonna be doing. You don't have to be over my shoulder. So that that was a big ordeal. Like, and I worked with her a couple months, and finally, man, like she wasn't getting. She blamed me because she wasn't getting the fame or the attention that she was wanting, and I'm like, you have a one gimmick, like you just have one thing, like you got like like you got to do more than that. Like you need something, not just these things. And so it was fun, but I was like, I'm not doing that again. Like that's
Yeah,
that,
it's a lot of headache for just putting some bread on the table, man.
yeah,
Because you're not just providing a service, you're kind of dealing with people's foibles and stuff that's going on up here or in here. There's kind of like nothing to do with anything like the business. It's more to do with them, and
yeah,
it can end up being kind of like therapy. Anyway, but
yeah.
Michael, it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you. It's been an absolute honor. Really, really thank you for your time today. My last question is if anybody would like to find out more about you, about your the Chaotic Chronicles, Dungeon Scribe Society, the SideQuest podcast, also for TaylorLyfe Digital Marketing, what should they do? Where should they go?
Um, sure. Actually, the my link tree has everything on it.
Nice.
So you go to Linktree, so / Mike.Taylor357. That's my link tree. You can for Chaotic Chronicles, you can go to chaoticchronicles.com. That's our website. Also, you can find us on pretty much most social media as well. Dungeon Scribe Society. You can go to Patreon for Dungeon Scribe Society. And then from there, you can reach out if you want to reach out to me personally or through Chaotic Chronicles about Dungeon Scribe, about maybe joining. If you're a creator or influencer or podcast host or something that want to kind of join in on our community outreach and just building each other up, definitely reach out to me. And um, the side quest our podcast, you can pretty much find side quest on any platform that has a podcast, but our website is paladinsofpodcast.com. That actually will have our episodes on there and different ways to reach out. And with all of that, like mostly I would say definitely reach out to me on Linktree and every social media platform. Digital Taylor Life Digital Marketing. Right now, we have our Facebook page. We transferred over from our website into another one, so that's working out. So definitely look out like Facebook, Taylor Life Marketing, Taylor Life Digital Marketing, and we'll there, and you definitely reach out, and we will hit you back, man, for sure.
So I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes anyway. Actually, I've got one last question, which was my original question from when I started to learn about you. What, if I can put it like this, I think this is the right question. What is Taylor Life?
Taylor Life, um, Taylor Life
Because it's not
is
just a nickname. It
no.
seems to be more of a way of being or something.
Yeah, it's we're my family. If you know my family, it's we are very active. We're very motivated. We all everybody has some sort of kind of like their own personal business on top of working somewhere else, and we're very we try to be very positive and outgoing. We do a lot of community outreach type stuff. You know, um, my uncles and my cousins and aunts and whatnot. Like there's always a couple of us that are out there just doing stuff. And it's you know, and on top of that, we know how to have a good time. Like we are just like I wouldn't say crazy, but we are out there. We do family get-togethers, and it's all about being a family. We have at least one family get-together every month, every other month, and you're thinking and it's a big one. Like you're talking between 50 and 75 people at every gathering. So
Wow.
Taylor Life is like it's more of like a family type thing. Like I don't
Right.
want to be a client. You're not just a client. Um, so it became more of a joke at first. Taylor Life, and then one day I was just like, man, like as I was making my marketing agency, I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna name it TaylorLyfe because, in a while, after a while, it's gonna be I vision this to be something bigger, and it's gonna be more of a family type thing, and that's where I kind of got that name. It went from being like a joke to something that I have now, and it's like a brand, which is funny because you can now Google me. I didn't know this until recently, like 2 days ago. You can Google actually Mike TaylorLyfe, and
That's what I did today.
yeah, and you can probably see like the first page or two of Google is
Because
just
when
like
I tried Michael Taylor, obviously there is quite a
yeah,
common name, so you were just lost in the. I couldn't find you anywhere, and I wasn't about to click, but I was like, could it work?
yeah, it
And
does.
then and it did.
Yeah,
It
and like
actually did.
I'm like I was blown away. I was like, holy crap, I can Google myself. Like, so that yeah, and I since then for the last several years I hashtag TaylorLyfe on everything. So now the SEO caught on, and especially with all the other platforms I'm doing and like the shows and websites and things like that I'm on. My name is actually started to click. So now it's actually it all came together. A plan that I told people to do years ago, which they thought I was crazy,
Yeah,
which now it's all this huge thing. So,
you've built the foundations and your journey, your life. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and sharing this with me. I've found this very inspirational, very very inspirational, and also very motivating speaking to you and the insights you provided me regards to your life within the army, from a personal point of view, and also sharing your life as a father and husband. Have also been very warm to my heart and my sensibilities around family as well. So thank you so much for your time today, Michael.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so that's all for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Startup Lowdown. I hope today's conversation brought you fresh insights and a new perspective on the realities of building a business. Remember, success isn't just about profit, it's about growth, both personal and professional. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider subscribing, leaving a review, a comment, and make sure you share it with everybody who might benefit from these candid stories.